Grasp all, lose all. Once in former times there lived in a certain city in India a poor oil seller named Denna, who never could keep any money in his pockets. And when the story begins, he had borrowed from a banker of the name of Lena a sum of 100 rupees, which, with the interest Lena always charged, amounted to a debt of 300 rupees. Now, Denna was doing very bad business and had no money with which to pay his debts. So Lena was very angry and used to come around to Denna's house every evening to abuse him until the poor man was nearly worried out of his life. Lena generally fixed his visits just when Denna's wife was cooking the evening meal, and would make such a scene that the poor oil seller and his wife and daughter quite lost their appetites. This went on for some weeks, till one day Denna said to himself he would stand it no longer, and that he had better run away, and, as a man cannot fly easily with a wife and daughter, he thought he must leave them behind. So that evening, instead of turning into his house as usual after his day's work, he just slipped out of the city without knowing very well where he was going. At about 10 o'clock that night, Denna came to a well by the wayside, which grew near a giant peepul tree, and as was very tired, he determined to climb it, and rest a little before continuing his journey in the morning. Up he went, and curled himself so comfortably amongst the great branches that, overcome with weariness, he fell fast asleep. Whilst he slept, some spirits who roam about such places on certain nights picked up the tree and flew away with it to a faraway shore where no creature lived, and there, long before the sun rose, they set it down. Just then the oil seller awoke, but instead of finding himself in the midst of a forest, he was amazed to behold nothing but waste shore and wide sea, and was dumb with horror and astonishment. Whilst he sat up, trying to collect his senses, he began to catch sight here and there of twinkling, flashing lights like little fires that moved and sparkled about, and wondered what they were. Presently he saw one so close to him that he reached out his hand and grasped it, and found that it was a sparkling red stone, scarcely smaller than a walnut. He opened a corner of his loincloth and tried the stone in it, and by he got another, and then a third and a fourth, all of which he tied carefully in his cloth. At last, just as day was breaking, the tree rose, and rapidly through the air was once deposited once more by the well where it had stood the previous evening. When Dana had discovered a little from the fright from which the extraordinary antics of the tree had caused him, he began to thank Providence that he was still alive, and as his love of wandering had been quite cured, he made his way back to the city and to his own house. Here he was met and soundly scolded by his wife, who assailed him with 100 questions and reproaches. As soon as she paused for breath, Dana replied, "I have only this one thing to say. Just look what I have got." And after carefully shutting all the doors, he opened the corner of his loincloth and showed her the 4 stones, which glittered and flashed as he turned them over and over. "Pooh!" said his wife. "The silly pebbles, as if it were something to eat. Now there'd be some sense in them, but what's the good of such things?" And she turned away with them with a sniff, for it happened that the night before, when Lena was around before usual to storm at Denna, he had been rather disturbed to find that his victim was from home, and had frightened the poor woman by his threats. Directly, however, he heard that Denna had come back, and Lena appeared in the doorway. For some minutes he talked to the oil seller at the top of his voice until he was tired. Then Denna said, "If your honor would deign to walk into my humble dwelling, I would speak." So Lena walked in, and the others, shutting as before all the doors and untied the corner of his cloth, showed him the 4 great flashing stones. "This is all," he said, "that I have in the world to set against my debt, for, as you honor knows, I haven't a penny, but the stones are pretty." Now Lena looked, and he saw at once these were magnificent rubies, and his mouth watered for them. But, as it would never do to show what was on his mind, he went on. What do I care for your stupid stones? It is my money I want, my lawful debt which you owe me, and I shall get it out of you somehow or another, or it will be the worse for you. To all his reproaches, Steno could answer nothing, but sat with his hands joined together beseechingly, asking for patience and pity. At length Lena pretended that, rather than have a bad debt on his hand, that he would take the loss by taking the stones in lieu of money, and while Stena nearly wept with gratitude, he wrote out a receipt for the 300 rupees, and wrapping the 4 stones in a cloth, he put them into his bosom, and went off on his horse. How shall I turn these rubies into money? Well, thought Lena, as he walked along. I daren't keep them, for they are great value, and if the Rajah heard that I had them, he would probably put me in the prison on some pretense and seize the stones, and all else that I have as well. But what a bargain I've got! 4 rupees worth a king's ransom for my 100 rupees. Oh, well, I must not take heed and betray my secrets. And he went on making plans. Presently he made up his mind what to do, and putting on his cleanest clothes, he set off to the house of the chief vizier, whose name was Musli, and after seeking a private audience, he brought him the 4 rubies and laid them before him. The vizier's eyes sparkled as he beheld the splendid gems. Fine indeed, murmured he, but I can't buy them at their real value. But if you like to take it, I will give you 10,000 rupees for the 4. To this the banker consented gratefully, and handing over the stones in exchange for the rupees, he hurried home, thanking his stars that he had been driven by such a reasonable bargain and obtained such an enormous profit. After Lena had disappeared, the wazir began casting about in his mind what to do with the gems, very soon determined that the best thing to do was to present them to the Rajah, whose name was Kare. Without losing a moment, he went that very day to the palace and sought a private interview with the Rajah, and when he found himself alone with his royal master, he brought the 4 jewels and laid them before him. "Oh ho!" said the Rajah. "These are priceless gems, and you have done well to give them to me. In return I give you and your heirs revenues of 10 villages." Now the vizier was overjoyed at these words, but only made his deepest obeisance, and whilst the king put the rubies into his turban, he hurried away beaming with happiness at the thought that for 10,000 rupees he had become the lord of 10 villages. The Rajah was also equally pleased, and strolled off with his new purchases to the women's quarters, and showed them to the queen, who was nearly out of her mind with delight. Then, as she turned them over and over in her hand, she said, If I had 8 more such gems, what a necklace I would make! Get me 8 more just like them, or I shall die." "Most unreasonable of women!" cried the Rajah. "Where am I to get 8 more such jewels as these? I gave 10 villages for them, and yet you are not satisfied." "What does it matter?" said the Rani. "Do you want me to die? Surely you can get some more where these came from." And then she fell to weeping and wailing until the Rajah promised that in the morning he would make arrangements to get some more such rubies, and that if she should be patient, she would have her desire. In the morning the Rajah sent for the vizier and said he must manage to get 8 more rubies like the one he had bought from the day before. "And if you don't, I shall hang you," cried the Rajah, for he was very cross. The poor vizier protested in vain that he knew not where to seek them. His master would not listen to a word he said. "You must," he said. "The Rani will die for want of a few rubies. Get me more where those came from." The vizier left the palace, much troubled in mind, and bade his slaves bring Lena before him. "Give me 8 more such rubies as you bought yesterday," commanded the vizier, directly as the banker was shown into his presence. "8 more, and be quick, or I am a dead man." "But how can I?" asked Lena. "Rubies like that don't grow upon bushes." "Where did you get them from?" asked the vizier. "From Dana, the oil seller," said the banker. "Well, send for him and ask him where he got them," answered the vizier. I am not going to hang for 20 denas. And more slaves were sent to summon Denna. When Denna arrived, he was closely questioned, and then all three stared to see the Raja, and to him Denna told the whole story. "What night was it that you slept in the peepul tree?" demanded Raja. "I can't remember," said Denna, "but my wife will know." Then Denna's wife was sent for, and she explained that it was on the last Sunday of the new moon. Now, everyone knows that it's a Sunday on the new moon that spirits have special powers to play pranks on mortals, so the Raja forbade them all, on pain of death, to say a word to anyone, and declared that on the next Sunday of the new moon, they four, Kare, Mosley, Lena, and Denna, would go and sit in the peepul tree and see what happens. The days dragged on to the appointed Sunday, and that evening the four met secretly and entered the forest. They had not far to go before they reached the peepul tree, into which they climbed as the Raja had planned. At midnight the tree began to sway, and presently it moved through the air. "See, sire," whispered Denna, "the tree is flying." "Yes, yes," said the Raja, "you have told the truth. Now sit quiet, and we shall see what happens." Away and away flew the tree, with the four men clinging tightly to its branches, till at last it was set down by the waste seashore, where the great wide sea came tumbling on the desert beach. Presently, as before, they began to see little points of light that glistened like fires all around them. Then Denna thought to himself, "Think, last time I only took 4 that came close to me, and I got rid of all my debt in return. This time I will take as many as I can get and be rich." "If I got 10,000 rupees for 4 stones," thought Lena, "I will gather 40 now for myself and become so wealthy that they will probably make me a wazir at least." "For 4 stones I received 10 villages," Mosley was silently thinking. "Now I will get stones enough to purchase a kingdom and become a Raja and employ viziers of my own." And Kare thought, "What is the good of only getting 8 stones? Why, they're enough to make 20 necklaces, and wealth means power." Full of avarice and desire, each scrambled down from the tree and spread his cloth, and darted here and there, picking up the precious stones, while looking over his shoulder to see whether his neighbor fared better than he did. So engrossed were they in the business of gathering wealth that the dawn came upon them unaware, and suddenly the tree rose up again and flew away, leaving them upon the seashore, staring after each other, each with his cloth heavy with priceless jewels. Morning broke in the city, and great was the consternation of the palace when the chamberlains declared that the Raja had gone out the evening before, and had not returned. "Ah," said one, "it is all right. Mosley Vizier will know where he is, for it was he who the king was companion of." Then they went to the vizier's house, and there they learned that the vizier had left the evening before, and had not returned. "But," said a servant, "Lena the banker will know where he is, for it was him that Mosley went." Then they visited the house of Lena, and there they learned that the banker had gone out the evening before, and that he, too, had not returned. But the porter told them that he was accompanied by Denna, the oil seller, so he would know where they were. So they departed for Denna's house, and Denna's wife met them with a torrent of reproaches and wailings, for Denna had gone off the evening before to Lena's house and had not returned. In vain they waited and searched. Never did any of the hapless four return to their homes. The confused tale which was told by Denna's wife was the only clue to their fate. To this day, in that country, when a greedy man has overreached himself and lost all in grasping for too much, folks say, "All is lost, all has he lost, neither Denna nor Lena nor Mosley nor Clade remain." And not 5 in 100 know how the proverb began, nor what it really signifies.